You are aware that for pleural, on the pleural effect, when patient is having a pneumothorax, you'll see same thing as you see air bubble, right? Okay, it is normal to see air bubble in the underwater seal. So this is what you're going to see in our Sinapi chest drain. Yeah, the bubbling in the monitoring chamber. Make sure this monitoring chamber has to be filled up with 20 cc of distilled water at all time. Okay, so in the event if let's say the uh, the the bottle is no more bubbling, okay, there are two possibilities, good or bad, right? Same thing as any other chest drainage bottle. The bad thing is that the tube might get migrated or blocked. Okay, so of course all this can be verified with either with X-ray or vital sign. But before you do the X-ray, you basically verify with the patient vital sign if patient is doing well or not. If patient is not doing well, more or less is blocked kind of thing. But if let's say patient is doing well, okay, vital sign is doing very good, and there's no more bubbling here, okay, there's one way for you to verify with this bottle. Very simple. Basically, what you need to do, squeeze this top, okay, few times, and just leave it. Okay, leave it. Then 1 hour later, come back. See and observe whether or not the bulb is still deflated or not. If it's still deflated, meaning there's no more air inside the pleural space itself. It's being sucked out. Yeah, that's like suction towel. Huh?
The air viper.
Air viper.
Go back.
But air bag is can be sucked in from the other end. So this one is like the
This
other.
one don't have.
Don't have. This one is like
It's closed.
Yeah, it's a closed system. So this directly reflected to our pleural space itself. The air, not the fluid. So this one is always reflected the amount of air inside the whether or not there's air inside the pleural space. So this is basically it's good for weaning lah. You may not see all these things much in A&E because it's the turnover very fast. Before you see all that, before patient gets well already in ICU or in the ward level lah. So this is how they monitor the pneumothorax. Yeah. Next one is the pleural effusion and hemothorax. For pleural effusion hemothorax, you don't see any kind of bubbling here. Okay, but of course you will see a lot of drainage coming out from here lah. Okay, this is where you monitor. So you are very familiar with also looking at the oscillation of the bottle, right? For pneumothorax, okay, you cannot see any oscillation. Okay, because remember in underwater seal, let's say this is a tube that is in the underwater seal. This part is already covered by the water, right? You can see oscillation because the water got sucked in and sucked out kind of thing, right? Like yo-yo. But in one wave valve, whatever is out is out. How to see oscillation? You cannot see oscillation. Okay, therefore, oscillation is not part of the monitoring in pneumothorax in Sinapi chest drainage bottle. Okay, but in the pleural effusion and the hemothorax, because sometimes you want to see the patency of the for pneumothorax, basically you see bubbling or not kind of thing. Right? But on the pleural effusion and hemothorax, sometimes you need to verify whether or not the tube is in the right place. Of course, the first thing that you need to look at is the vital sign, make sure, and the amount of fluid, the thing. And how do I know if the tube is still inside the correct space? If let's say, because you're draining fluid, right? There's some fluid that's left inside the tube, right? You will still be able to see the oscillation in the tubing only. Okay, so you can check the patency of the chest tube via from this oscillation here. Okay, but not after this. It's very important to note that, because in the oscillation on the pleural effect is in the underwater seal itself. But since we are not using underwater seal, whatever out is out this one. Okay, so the movement, you can see the movement, a bit of oscillation within the tubing only. Yeah, so take note of that. That's the differences only. Yeah, so like I was saying just now at the beginning of my presentation, that for pleural effusion and hemothorax, there will be high tendency that the fluid will be accumulated here, even though the bottle is still empty. Okay, or maybe like a few hours later after the insertion, the fluid got accumulated here and cannot be drained down. Okay, my first response as a clinician, what I'll do is just squeeze the bulb, hoping the thing can come down. Yes, it's okay, but after a while, after a few squeezes, it's going to be like this. And you cannot squeeze anymore, the fluid is going to accumulate here. Okay, so this is something like I just give you a scenario. The tube here, I just dip inside the water and cover with my finger, leave it up. The water is going to stuck here because of the negative pressure is pulling here. How am I going to push this thing down without lifting my finger? Okay, basically I need to milk it to milk it down. Okay, so that's why that's the concept of milking. So therefore, for this case, okay, same thing. When the intrapleural pressure has been re-established inside the patient's lung, especially on pleural effusion and hemothorax, because it's just draining fluid, and there's no way for the fluid to come down already. So the only thing that you can do is to milk the bottle. So basically what you need to do, just make sure this is the lower side of the bed, then you just milk it. Okay, so there's this like a milker that is provided. Okay, there's still like two fangs here. Okay, put it on top. If you let's say you're right-handed, just put your thumb here, okay, and just press very hard. Okay, here's the technique. Then if you're right-handed, right? So use the left-handed to hold strong, yeah. Then you squeeze and just pull. Okay, as you squeeze and pull, basically you're draining the fluid down. But make sure that this one is like the fluid is you position it on top of the valve itself, so that you just need to milk it. So the milking purpose is just to bring down the fluid down into the bottle, not for any other things. Yeah, only for this pleural effusion and hemothorax cases only lah. Yeah, and I think what you'll be using this also during the transfer, before transferring the patient actually. Let's say of course I think you may not encounter all this much lah. So I think the fluid will be easily drained down because it's the first insertion is A&E. But just in case if let's say, how come this one still cannot drain down, because it's like a few hours later, maybe because patient is under observation. Then after that this is the time that you milk the tubing. But make sure you position the fluid above the valve first before you milk. Okay, so only for that instances. So in terms of removal of blockage, I would suggest that you can, if let's say you're using the normal chest tube, okay, but if let's say you're using the three-way stopcock itself, just follow according to your current protocol on how to remove the blockage on the, or let's say on the Seldinger catheter or the pigtail catheter. Yeah, that one will let you do that one. So, but this our main purpose of this milking is not for basic kind of normal drainage kind of thing, only for that condition whereby fluid is accumulated there, stuck. Okay, and you may think that, oh, this one is blocked. Okay, do not change the bottle. Okay, just milk it. Okay, nothing wrong with the bottle, nothing wrong with the valve. Okay, it's not blocked. It's just that because the negative pressure, there's a negative pressure built up already from here to the patient side. The only way for you to drain it down, just milk it. Yeah. Okay. All right. So for pneumothorax, basically same thing as the two cases that I just explained. First thing that will be resolved is the pneumothorax first. Then after that, followed by the pneumothorax. So how do you know that pneumothorax is already kind of gone? Basically, there's no more bubbling. Leave it. Don't squeeze. Don't just leave it because you're draining the fluid. Then basically the management of the rest of it is same as how you manage the pleural effusion. Okay, just drain. Look at the oscillation. Then once the fluid got accumulated here cannot be drained, then milk it. Yeah. Okay. So that's the purpose of the milker. Yeah, not for any other thing. Yeah. Okay. I think basically I covered everything. Any questions so far?
I've got one question.